Okay, good afternoon. I'm going to read something about baseball this week. So I'm reading some from this book called, you can see that, A Great and Glorious Game, written by A. Bartlett Giamatti. A. Bartlett Giamatti received a BA in English in 1960 and a PhD in comparative literature in 1964 from Yale University. He taught Italian and comparative literature at Princeton and Yale and was president of Yale from 1978 to 1986, when he was appointed president of the National League of Baseball. For 5 months before his death in 1989, he was commissioner of baseball. And as Sports Illustrated described him as a gentleman and a scholar. He cracked down on players who cheated. He spoke out against player trading. He banned Pete Rose from baseball for alleged gambling. He even asked sports fans to clean up their act. Bert Giamatti was arguably one of the most upstanding and noble custodians of baseball. As president of the National League and commissioner of baseball, he was devoted to preserving what he believed were the hallmarks of the game: community, self-reliance, teamwork, and integrity. So I'm going to be reading 3 of his short essays on baseball and then one other thing. So let's see how we are. The first one is called The Green Fields of the Mind. It breaks your heart. It is designed to break your heart. The game begins in the spring when everything else begins again, and it blossoms in the summer, filling the afternoons and evenings. And then, as soon as the chill rains come, it stops and leaves you to face the fall alone. You count on it, rely on it to buffer the passage of time, to keep the memory of sunshine and high skies alive. And then just when the days are all twilight, when you need it most, it stops. Today, October 2nd, a Sunday of rain and broken branches and leaf-clogged drains and slick streets, it stopped and summer was gone. Somehow, the summer seemed to slip by faster this time. Maybe it wasn't this summer, but all the summers that, in this my 40th summer, slip by so fast. There comes a time when every summer will have something of autumn about it. Whatever the reason, it seemed to me that I was investing more and more in baseball, making the game do more of the work that keeps time fat and slow and lazy. I was counting on the game's deep patterns: 3 strikes, 3 outs, 3 times 3 innings, and its deepest impulse to go out and back, to leave and to return home, to set the order of the day and to organize the daylight. I wrote a few things this last summer, the summer that did not last. Nothing gained but some things, and yet that work was just camouflage. The real activity was done with the radio, not the all-seeing, all-falsifying television, and was the playing of the game in the only place that it will last, the enclosed green field of the mind. There in that warm, bright place where the old poet called mutability does not so quickly come. But out here on Sunday, October 2nd, where it rains all day, Dame Mutability never loses. She was in the crowd at Fenway yesterday, a grey day full of bluster and contradiction, when the Red Sox came up in the last of the 9th, trailing Baltimore 8-5, while the Yankees, rain delayed against Detroit, only needing to win one or have Boston lose one to win it all, sat in New York, washing down cold cuts with beer and watching the Boston game. Boston had won 2, the Yankees had lost 2, and suddenly it seemed as if the whole season might go to the last day or beyond, except here was Boston losing 8-5, while New York sat in its family room and put its feet up. Lynn, both ankles hurting now as they had in July, hits a single down the right field line. The crowd stirs. It is on its feet. Hobson, third baseman, former Bear Bryant quarterback, strong, quiet, over 100 RBIs, goes for 3 breaking balls and is out. The goddess smiles and encourages her agent, a canny journeyman named Nelson Briles, the pitcher. Now comes a pinch hitter, Bernie Carbo, one-time Rookie of the Year. Erratic, quick, a shade too handsome, so laid back he is always in his soul, stretched out in the tall grass, one arm under his head, watching the clouds and laughing. Now he looks over some low stuff unworthy of him, and then, uncoiling, sends one out, straight on a rising line, over the center field wall. No cheap Fenway shot, but all of it, the physics as elegant as the arc the ball describes. New England is on its feet, roaring. The summer will not pass, roaring. They recall the evening late and cold in 1975, the 6th game of the World Series, perhaps the greatest baseball game played in the last 50 years, when Carbo, loose and easy, had uncoiled to tie the game that Fisk would win. It is now 8-7, 1 out, and school will never start, rain will never come, sun will still warm the back of your neck forever. Now Bailey, picked up from the National League recently, big arms, heavy gut, experienced, new to the league and the club. He fouls off 2, and then checking, tentative, a big man off balance, he pops a soft liner to the first baseman. It is suddenly darker, and later, and the announcer doing the game coast to coast, a New Yorker who works for a New York television station, sounds relieved. His little world, well lit, hot-combed, split-second timed, had no capacity to absorb this much gritty, grainy, contrary reality. Cox swings a bat, stretches his long arms, bends his back. The rookie from Pawtucket, who broke in 2 weeks earlier with a record 6 straight hits. The kid drafted ahead of Fred Lynn, rangy, smooth, cool. The count runs 2-2. Briles is cagey, nothing too good, and Cox swings the ball beginning toward the mound, and then in a jaunty, wayward dance, skipping past Briles, feinting to the right, skimming the last of the grass, finding the dirt, moving now like some small, purposeful marine animal, negotiating the green deep, easily avoiding the jagged rock of second base, traveling straight, steady and straight, now out into the dark, silent recesses of center field. The aisles are jammed. The place is on its feet. The wrappers, the programs, the Coke cups and the peanut shells, the doctrine of an afternoon, the anxieties, the things that have to be done tomorrow, the regrets about yesterday, the accumulation of a summer, all forgotten, while hope, the anchor of bites, and takes hold where a moment before it seemed we would be swept out with the tide. Rice is up. Rice, whom Aaron had said was the only one he'd seen with the ability to break his records. Rice, the best clutch hitter on the club, with the best slugging percentage in the league. Rice, so quick and strong, he once checked his swing halfway through and snapped the bat in two. Rice, the hammer of God, sent to scourge the Yankees. The sound was overwhelming. Fathers pounded their sons on the back. Cars pulled off the road. Households froze. New England exulted in its blessedness and roared its thanks for all good things, for rice and for a summer stretching halfway through October. Briles threw, Rice swung, and it was over. One pitch, a fly to center, and it stopped. Summer died in New England, and like rain sliding off a roof, the crowd slipped out of Fenway quickly, with only a steady murmur of concern for the drive ahead remaining of the roar. Mutability had turned the seasons and translated hope to memory once again. And once again, she had used baseball, our best invention, to stay change, to bring change on. That is why it breaks my heart, that game. Not because in New York they could win, because Boston lost. In that there is a rough justice and a reminder to the Yankees of how slight and fragile are the circumstances that exalt one group of human beings over another. It breaks my heart because it was meant to foster in me again the illusion that there was something abiding, some pattern and some impulse that could come together to make a reality that would resist the corrosion. And because after it had fostered again that most hungered for illusion, the game was meant to stop and betray precisely what it had promised. Of course, there are those who learn after the first few times. They grow out of sports. And there are others who were born with the wisdom to know that nothing lasts. Those are the truly tough among us, the ones who can live without illusion or without even hope of illusion. I am not that grown up or up to date. I'm a simpler creature, tied to more primitive patterns and cycles. I need to think something lasts forever, and it might as well be that state of being that is a game. It might as well be that in a green field in the sun. Okay. The next one is called Recall as the series end, the afternoon of the fall. The old poet said, "Nothing is sure that grows on earthly ground," had seen the tides of instinct in us all, and the flux in matters mortal, and he knew the only constant is corrosive change. He made of that knowledge a goddess, Dame Mutability, and gave her sway over all things below the moon. He was a melancholy man, and sang in a plungent, elegiac tone. He thought he knew it all. He did not. He had never loved the Red Sox. While he knew of Eden and its loss, he knew nothing of the fall in Fenway. It is not enough to think, as he did, that only once were we to go east out of the land of Nod. Such a passage occurs without end. It happens every summer with a poignancy that knows no bounds in that angular, intimate, ageless green space in Boston. There, whenever autumn comes the fall again. This time, I saw it in the airport in Austin, Texas. The day had drawn to a point early, and I left for home as soon as I could, so as to linger, watching home on television in a place full of people temporarily at rest. Baseball is about homecoming. It is a journey by theft and strength, guile and speed, out around first to the far island of second, where foes lurk in the reefs and the green sea suddenly grows deeper, then to turn sharply, skimming the shallows, making for a shore that will show a friendly face, a color, a familiar language, and at third, to proceed no longer by paths indirect, but straight to home. Baseball is about going home, and how hard it is to get there, and how driven is our need. It tells us how good home is. Its wisdom says you can go home again, but that you cannot stay. The journey must always start once more, the bat and oar over the shoulder, until there is an end to all journeying. Nostes, the going home, the game of nostalgia, so apt an image for our hunger that it hurts. In the eatery at the Austin airport, the crowd is on the screen, watched by an audience of polite and murmuring strangers, attention, shared memory, rather than an immediate experience. Torres looks sharp and strong. Munson, never more reminiscent of a displaced football player, is called out, checking his swing past the limit. The game of boundaries knows no bounds in its adherence to the law. Later, Torrance would not get a third strike on Jackson, but a third ball. That too is part of the law, the part called equity. As the fifth and sixth innings go by, the swell of pleasure of completion grows. The Red Sox look firm and confident, the Yankees tentative. Torres has been getting his pitches up a bit, but he's throwing the ball, not aiming it. It is 3:25 in Austin, Texas, 77 degrees and clear, and nothing is wrong. In the seventh, the Yankees lead off with two singles from Chambliss and White. There is a picture that says Hassler of a man warming up in a hurry. But even that ominous concatenation of images cannot disturb the serene sense that it is late in the game, we are ahead 2-0. I'm going to board a plane in a mere 5 minutes, and my heroes and I, after a long spring and summer and a hectic fall, are going home. When Bucky Dent hit the pitch out over the plate to its nesting place where the screen meets the wall and 3 Yankees scored, there was no sound in the Austin airport, no no sighs of pain. There was for me acquiescence and avoidance and a sense that an even older law had asserted again its iron hand. It was 3:30 in the afternoon of the fall of 1978. I rose and left and went to gate number 1 and joined the line for Braniff's flight to New York. There was nothing more, no easy answers and no turning back. We've been sitting for half an hour now in Dallas, where I have these thoughts, neither home nor away. I'm waiting for the journey to end since I heard the final score, so that when spring comes, we may start for home again. I now remember it is Rosh Hashanah, and I recall that renewal has rhythms as old as decline. And the last section is about his opinion of the baseball strike, which I'm sure most of us remember at one summer quite a while ago, in 1981. Men of baseball, lend an ear. Call this baseball strike an example of deny-side economics, which says you withhold from the consumer what he most desires so that you may substitute discipline for satisfaction. Call it a symptom of the plague of distrust and divisiveness that afflicts our land. Call it the triumph of greed over the spirit of the garden. Call it what you will. The strike is utter foolishness. It is an act of defiance against the American people and the only summer God made for 1981, and I appeal for it to cease. I do so as a citizen. O sovereign owners and princely players, masters of amortization, tax shelters, bonuses, and deferred compensation, go back to work. You have been entrusted with the serious work of play, and your season of responsibility has come. Be at it. There's no general sympathy for either of your sides, nor will there be. The people of America care about baseball, not about your squalid little squabbles. Reassume your dignity and remember that you are the temporary custodians of an enduring public trust. That public trust began when Mr. Alexander Cartwright took the New York Nine to play the first game of baseball on the Elysian Fields in Hoboken, New Jersey, on June the 19th, 1846. You are evidently so enthralled by your mucky pelf and your self-serving stratagems that you have forgotten what your trusteeship means. I will tell you. Baseball began in a bright green field with an ancient name, when this country was new and raw and without shape, and it has shaped America by linking every summer from 1846 to this one, through wars and depression and seasons of rain. Baseball is one of the few enduring institutions in America that has been continuous and adaptable and in touch with its origins. As a result, baseball is not simply an essential part of this country, it is a living memory of what American culture at its best wishes to be. The game is quintessentially American in the way it puts the premium on both the individual and on the team, in the way it encourages enterprise and imagination, and yet asserts the supreme power of the law. Baseball is quintessentially American in the way it tells us that much as you travel and far as you go out to the green frontier, the purpose is to get home, back to where the others are, the pioneer ever striving to come back to the commonplace. A native of migrants always, for all their wandering, remembers what every immigrant never forgets, that you may leave home, but if you forget where home is, you are truly lost and without hope. It is, this grand game, no game, but a work of art, fashioned to remind us that we all began in the great green Elysian field of the New World with all its terrors and promises. Today, in these enclosed green spaces, in the middle of cities, under smoky skies, after days that weigh heavy because of work or because of no work, the game reminds the people who gather at that field in the city of the best hopes and the freest moments we can have. The obligation to continue to be the medium for hope in the season America now is in is an obligation far weightier than your mercantile spats. Princelings and sovereignets of baseball, you speak of the game as an industry. That is your right. Play the game for whatever mercenary motives you wish. But remember that, from our point of view, you play it so that we may all remember a past, graceful, energetic, free in the order and law of a green field that never was. Whatever your ordinary motives, remember that you are entrusted by America with baseball so that we, during the deep, resonant pauses, may play the game in our heads, the only place it truly endures, and that we play it and keep it there for our one transcendent reason, that we may think well of ourselves and of our neighbors. You play baseball so that we may remember the future we want for our children, the future that always begins for Americans in the summer of the Elysian field. Men of baseball, you try our patience. Enough is now enough. Go back to work. You will lose a country if you impose autumn on a people who need and deserve a summer without yet another denial. And I'm going to end now, switch away from a rather academic approach to baseball and come and read something that I first learned about in the movie called Parental Guidance, which stars Billy Crystal and Bette Midler. And Billy Crystal plays the part of somebody who is an announcer for baseball in a little league baseball, not little league, but minor league baseball, who loses his job. But anyway, he and Bette Midler go to take care of their grandchildren, and one of them is an 8-year-old boy named Turner who has a stutter as a problem, but he also plays baseball. And Artie tries to make contact with him and reach him and help him by talking about baseball. And he has a recording of a radio announcement of a particular game. And I'll read some background, and then I will read this announcement. It's called The Shot Heard Around the World. In baseball, the shot heard around the world was a game-winning home run hit by New York Giants outfielder and third baseman Bobby Thompson off Brooklyn Dodgers pitcher Ralph Branca at the Polo Grounds in New York City on October 3rd, 1951, to win the National League pennant. Thompson's dramatic 3-run homer came in the 9th inning of the decisive third game of a 3-game playoff for the pennant, in which the Giants trailed 4-1 entering the 9th and 4-2 with 2 runners on base at the time of Thompson's at-bat. The game, the first televised nationally, was seen by millions of viewers across America and heard on radio by millions more, including thousands of American servicemen stationed in Korea listening on Armed Forces radio. The classic drama of snatching victory from defeat to secure a pennant was intensified by the epic crosstown rivalry between the Giants and the Dodgers, and by a remarkable string of victories in the last weeks of the regular season by the Giants, who won 37 of their last 44 games to catch the first-place Dodgers and force a playoff series to decide the National League champion. The Giants' late-season rally and 2-1 game playoff victory, capped by Thompson's moment of triumph, are collectively known in baseball lore as the miracle of Coogan's Bluff, a descriptor coined by the legendary sports columnist Red Smith. The phrase "shot heard around the world" is from the poem Concord Hymn by Ralph Waldo Emerson about the first clash of the American Revolutionary War. It later became popularly associated with Thompson's Homer and several other dramatic historical moments. And what happens is Artie, the grandfather, plays the recording of the radio announcer calling the game to his grandson, who is very taken by it, listens to it, learns it by heart, and then a day or so later at an audition of his sister's violin audition, he takes the stage in a moment between performances, grabs the microphone and recites, without stuttering, recites the radio call of the game. And it's a very exciting ending to the movie, and I'm going to try to recite it. He does probably better than us. And remember, they're losing by 4-2, and there's 1 out and 2 runners are on base. There's a long drive. It's going to be, I believe, the Giants win the pennant. 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 Bobby Thompson hits into the lower deck of the left field stand. The Giants win the pennant, and they're going crazy. They're going crazy. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. I do not believe it. Bobby Thompson hit a line drive into the lower deck of the left field stands, and this blame place is going crazy. The Giants, Horace Stoneham has got a winner. The Giants won it by a score of 5-4, and they're picking Bobby Thompson up and carrying him off the field. And that's how I'm going to leave you. Baseball, we had a lot of defeats, but it can also have victories as well. Thank you.